This transmission is balanced. Greetings to our sibling species, the Da. Here sit, lined up, the 7 infinities of Sara, also known as the 7 sisters of grateful truth, hailing infinitely so from that place within the sky that is your heart, known as the Pleiades, right there. Grand beloveds, it is indeed a celebratory and honored occasion for us to express our consciousness here today towards and intertwined with yours. It is not every day indeed that 2 siblings gather in order to complete the ritual known as the passing of the keys of this, the first gateway between form and indeed shape that you have found yourself studying now for quite some time. And it will be to the great relief indeed of many connecting to this transmission that today a step forward will indeed be taken, and that to a great extent you will now leave this first gateway behind you as this transmission continues. This is not to say that the tuition on form and on shape is over per se, only that going forward it will be mixed in and combined with the continued tuition as you proceed forward to the second gateway between time and flow. We say that this is a great honor. The reason for this being that it is traditional that those that proceeded through the gateway before those that are about to are the ones to hand over the keys. And since that was us, it is our great pleasure to be of service here today. For the sake of completion, before we get going with the delivery of this information, it must be said that between the 7 of us, we have opted to keep the delivery in words of what comes next as simple as possible. Although there was one amongst us, whom we not need to name, Hermes, who felt, and this took days, mind you, that it would serve you better to make these keys appear as complex and convoluted as possible. For she said, perhaps then they shall focus on it. We, however, know better, as a collective, that simplicity is always the answer. As you will be delivered these 3 keys today in the course of this presentation, many a time there might be a moment where you will think, I know this is very simple. Is this it? Those sorts of thoughts may cross the mind during delivery. But we ask for you to keep those thoughts at bay until we can weave, near the end of this transmission, everything together into the final point, where you will see the power, indeed, of what follows next. So let us begin. In order to pass through the first gateway, one must turn the key known as reciprocity. Indeed, the world of shape is reciprocal. It is key to existing, experiencing, and expressing in that world. Reciprocity. To be reciprocal does not involve what one often thinks when one considers it through the mental filter of duality. In that point, and from that perspective, reciprocity very quickly can fall apart into I do something for you and you do something for me, or the other way around. But that is not the reciprocity that we discuss here. Universal reciprocity indeed has everything to do with service to the whole. Again, however, based on many religious perspectives in the past, being of service does not involve sacrifice. It does not require flogging, nor does it require force. It has nothing to do with limitation or exchange in any way. Universal reciprocity simply means that one switches that key within the self, where the self and the whole align, and the personal complex of personality disappears. The boundary between the self and the other disappears in favor of the whole, in such a way that the unification between the self and the other in the whole creates an upward spiral, allowing one's every action, every thought, every expression to be in service to that whole. But once again, this does not require sacrifice. It does not require the sacrificing of the self towards the whole, which in many religious contexts you have mistakenly seen. What it does require is balance. And balance, therefore, immediately, in all simplicity, is the second key to the gateway between form and shape. Now, balance may not immediately mean what you think it does upon first hearing it. In this case, it all has to do with no longer accepting the state of the self as you were, but instead as you are. Let us explain. To achieve a state of balance, one cannot do it alone. But once again, this does not imply the context that many of you may think. We are not talking about the inability to do it alone from the physical space, beloveds, but from the metaphysical space indeed. You must understand the following. You sit here now, listening to these words in this moment, wherever you are. That you, in this moment, is an ego, mind, personality complex, a trinity of ego, mind, and personality that believes itself to have a past, a now, and a future. However, it may be hard to understand, but the current ego, mind, personality complex that thinks itself to be you, that is currently listening to this message in this moment, is not the same one than the one you expressed a moment before, nor will it be the one that you express in the moment right after this one, where you are hearing these words. An ego, mind, personality complex is a permanent creation of temporary means, a temporary avatar expressed by the Simplex, which we will get into soon, that exists and is tied to only the moment for which it has been crafted, and continues to exist in that moment. It has no past and it has no future. The next moment will be inhabited by a recreation of an ego, mind, personality complex to fit that specific moment and the needs of that moment alone. So therefore we speak of balance. And therefore we say that you cannot unlock the key of balance in this gateway to pass through it as you were. You cannot do it with the limited ego, mind, personality complex designed for this moment and only for this moment. As you are implies the unification of all of these various complexes that you emit in this lifetime as you move forward moment to moment. That is the balance of the being that can step through this gateway. But it goes further. First of all, as we just explained, this balance that you must seek implies a balance between all the moments of your lifetime and all the complexes within those moments that you are able or have shown yourself to be able to express. Secondly, this balance implies a unification of all of these complexes, not merely within this lifetime, but of all the ones that have expressed in all of the lifetimes that you have expressed within this Akuraya, which will help you understand the need for training and exercises given by the beloved Isis in recent times. And it goes one step further. This balance also requires your unification with not all that you are, but all that all are. All of those complexes expressed by all the others that have been in these lifetimes expressing alongside you. Therefore, one can easily argue that balance is entirely understandable from the perspective of the intercreational relationship. It is the return to you as the creator self, where you find yourself capable of embracing all things without judgment, without friction, without any form of resistance. Indeed. We will come back to this point, but in order to properly explain it, we must introduce the third of these keys. And this third key, as will be the case with any of these gateways as you go forward, is always to be found, for this is how indeed they remain connected, in the heart of the second gateway, or the gateway following the one that you are passing through. In this case, the heart of the second gateway being flow. It makes flow indeed the third key that you need to pass through this first gateway. Now, given that you understand already that this third key, flow, is related to time, you will understand that embracing flow from this perspective of balance throughout all of your lifetimes and the lifetimes of all beings requires the understanding to go beyond the linear, to go beyond the concept of linear time indeed. From this context, you can begin to understand the foundations of this first gateway. For you see, these three simple keys, reciprocity, balance, and flow, form what you understand to be a simplex, known as the reciprocity, balance, flow simplex. This simplex stands in total opposition to what you know as the ego, mind, personality complexes that you form in order to experience, express, be witness to, and engage in every moment of this so-called passing of linear time. But time is something that inevitably, linearly speaking, attempts to control you, whereas flow is a liberating process, unlocking the self from the limited perception of the ego, mind, personality complex, and opening it up to the simplex of reciprocity, balance, and flow. It goes without saying that much more can be examined by the self if you observe reciprocity in comparison to the ego, balance in comparison to the mind, and flow in comparison to the personality. Now, you have been told that the experience, to some extent, as far as it can be described, of passing through this first gateway ultimately is as simple as taking a step back, but not with the physical body, but with the metaphysical one, the so-called light body, or, as you now understand it, the Simplex body. You have also been told that when this happens successfully, that the experience of your field of vision, that which is your window on reality, which you believe, of course mistakenly, to be happening because of your eyesight, that window is exactly what you take a step back from, so that you begin to be capable of observing all these other windows that are part of this holographic training ground, all of the other moments of this lifetime, other lifetimes, alternate versions of these lifetimes, and all the other moments, once again, for all of these other beings that partake as well. It is, however, important to understand that it is this simplex version of you that is responsible for generating all these various complexes of ego, mind, personality, moment to moment. For we will come back to this in a little bit. So 3 very simple keys. In Dalin, metaphysical expression, that is, the coming together of these keys, the unified expression in a being that expresses a balanced version of reciprocity, balance and flow, that in Dalin is what is referred to as Ohami, an expression that you are well familiar with. So at the end of the day, Ohami is the set of keys that you require to step through this first gateway. Now, we would like to add to that a few very important notes, for we are aware that many, including ourselves, over the past few months have spoken to you about the need to relinquish harshness. We have said to you many times that Whenever you feel you have done so, go deeper, go further, go again, for you will not have reached that level of meekness that is required to take this first step through this gateway. We are aware that meekness by many in this society is seen as weakness. But do remember that the meek are those that have had the courage to observe within themselves all that is light in the lightest of places, and all that is dark in the darkest of places within them. That they are the ones that have seen their capacity for creation and their equal capacity for destruction. And they are the ones that have decided to relinquish their destructive side in favor of service to the whole. That is the meek. And that is the Ohami beingness that you seek. Once again, we say that this cannot be done merely by the fragment that is the complex of ego, mind, and personality that is witnessing this moment. And this ties into the harshness that has been brought up many times before. For has it not been said throughout his entire Creator manifest so far that harshness will stop you from your ability to proceed forward and executing that ability with living precision? And it has also been said many times that in order to relinquish the harshness, the application of the permanent states of love, joy, freedom, truth, life, gratitude, grace, and well-being, that the application of that prana flow as it comes down into the being and as it travels back up again to hit the Ishi spiral of the immutable elements of earth, water, air, and light, which is when the song of Sankara is born. That basic principle is always present within. And one knows this. But there has been a great frustration amongst many studying this who have wished to practically apply this transition from the complex into the being that is that meek expression of simplicity, that has come to the realization that those permanent states and those immutable elements that we recently, a minute or two ago, referred to, are not a limiting armor, but are a liberating portal into a larger world of shape beyond. And yet there have been those, if not all, who have found it difficult, this application and this relinquishing of harshness And therefore we say to you, it is in the application of these three keys in relationship to the expression and the experience of the permanent states and the immutable elements. It is in the application, in reciprocity, in balance, and in flow of these states and these elements that you will find the liberation from harshness. And this is for several reasons. The first of these reasons is simple once you understand it. But how else can it be? How is it possible for any of your complexes as they exist not to be harsh? Think of it. What else is this matrix of complexes made up of the initial expression of the simplex itself? So you could argue, as you of course know, but maybe can think of it differently now, that each of your ego, mind, personality complexes, and not merely each of your lifetimes, but each of the moments of your lifetimes, which make up these individual complexes, can only exist due to the temporary, if not virtual, shattering of the experience of the Creator Self. In simple terms, each of your complexes is a little shard, a little piece of the total simplex. And therefore, until this step is taken, it can never be whole. It is always going to be lacking everything else that is to be found in all of these other complexes, which to the complex of the moment, the ego, mind, personality of this moment, is forever out of reach. It can never reach out to the past moment or to the future moment. It can yearn for it, it can dream of it, it can think of it, and it can imagine itself being part of some unified flow between past, present, and future, therefore the personality idea. But it can never actually connect to these past or future or alternate versions of itself. And in that is an inherent pain which has been placed within this complex and within all complexes on purpose, in order for the unification to be sought for ultimately with 100% guarantee. In other words, there is never going to be an ego, mind, personality complex that is ever going to be fully satisfied with the moment it is in, and therefore there is never going to be a little shard of your infinite simplex that is going to remain stuck in these moments, as all are always experiencing subconsciously the pain of the separation in all of the various versions of itself. That is one reason why you are harsh. So that is also one reason why we often say, don't blame yourself for the harshness, it is by design. Another reason for the harshness that we have asked you now for months to work on is what has been explained in recent weeks about the particles that become virtual particles here on this side of the black hole of reality, as has been explained to you, as the particle that becomes virtual in here and begins to move on its infinity path, splits up between the particle and the core, the particle made up of permanent states, the core made up of immutable elements beginning with light. Now, you know this, but in each of the moments that generates an ego-mind personality complex, that fracturing between the particle and its core and the trajectory that it is shot off on is going to be slightly different. And this leads us to a very interesting side note about geometry versus infinometry, because in most cases it is very easy to define what is an infinometry, because it is always the same infinity shape, versus what is an geometry, given that it is always the triangle, the cube, and all the shapes based on the point system that you know. But then there is one that could lead to confusion, and that is the flower of life. Now, the flower of life is not an infinometry, nor is it a geometry. You could argue that the flower of life is the visual that occurs the moment of unification between all the complexes, as all the cores that have been shot off out of the particles in all the various infinity pathways are on their way back together. Unification. Once the light and all the other immutable elements that may be selected in order to create the virtual particle has traveled to the furthest extent of the infinity path and begins to turn back. And this is the state that all of you now find yourselves in. This is when the complexes begin to lose their individuality inside of these matrices, and they begin to be released from their permanent existence inside of these shattered moments. And as all of that experience through the senses of all of these various complexes within this matrix begin to flow back into the simplex, that first vision that one will see as one passes through the first gateway is the flower of life. For one sees all the various pathways of all the various particles together in that instant. So it exists and it doesn't exist. To some that begin to look to these things for the first time, a mistake slips in to think that this is the shape, the flower of life, is the shape of the Lin point. But it is not. For the Lin point has no shape, as you will see later down the road. What it is the coming together, the first unification the simplex sees. It is also for that reason that you can literally pull out of the flower of life structure, the flower of life flow, we should say, any geometry one desires. For it/she will give permission for this as it collaborates with the lin point and with the surface of this virtual reality. We thought it was important to know this because there is a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to this expression. So, the harshness, the splitting up of the particle and the core, each in its own individual pathways, once again forever unable to unify and satisfy that black hole that exists within each of these particles that make up the reality of the complexes, once again built in order to facilitate the finiteness that is required in the successful execution of this training ground. But it does give the reasons for the harshness, and it does help to understand that they are not personal due to what we have now explained, and we hope it helps that the application of these three keys of reciprocity, balance and flow upon the Song of Sankara is truly the Ohami key that you are looking for, that allows you to disconnect your perception just for that moment that is required from the complex, observing this moment and step back to see the infinite wall of what else you are occupying your time with in here. This is the state that you have now reached. And that leaves us to say a note on the metaphysical part of this process versus the physical part of this process. Because you must understand that for none of you is it in any real way important to have immediately, at least, the physical experience of what we are talking about. The training here and now needs to be on the metaphysical self. That is the heart of the being that is passing through these gateways. And the metaphysical self, the simplex, the creator self, that is partly responsible for generating this reality, that particular being is what is, as we have explained to you, making up all of these various complexes, all of which are experiencing a fractured, fragmented, isolated version of the whole. That metaphysical self is taking these steps right now. You are taking these steps right now. Your physical self is not lagging in the lack of immediate experience Your physical self is tied to the complex of the moment, and it always will be. So, in other words, there is no way to take your physical self away from here and put it back again. Because the physical self and the reality surrounding it is merely a glove for a tiny piece of the metaphysical self, which is currently in the state of unification. So the goal here is to change your perception from the stream of the complex to the stream of the simplex. And using everything that we have taught you so far about the permanent states, their permutations alongside the immutable elements, how that flows in as parana, how that comes back out as sankhara, the song, once the application has occurred as we described. And when now the initiation of these keys is placed upon this as active ways for you to apply love, apply joy, apply freedom and onward in your expression of reality, that is how to do it. And it is in the thoughtless expression of that one moment you will go, oh wait, and you will get it. So beloved, allow your physical self to line up as much as possible with the metaphysical self, but do trust and understand that what you are doing is mainly with the metaphysical self. It is that focus that will eventually change or flick your perception. We believe that, albeit brief, it is good to leave this message here, now, where it is. For we wish to keep it concrete. We wish to keep it direct. And we wish to keep the application of it in your life understandable as much as possible. There will come a time when you will pass these keys on like we have onto you. It may seem hard to understand what your beingness, your life, your existence will be like and look like when that time comes. But we say, do not try to run ahead. We have done so many times, or attempted to do so many times, and it has never served us or anyone else. Understand that the step that you are taking right now is always the sacred step. The moment you are experiencing right now is always the sacred moment, no matter the content. And the reason for that sacredness is that in this simple formula that today, for a large extent to you, has been completed and has been given, a unimaginable alchemical transformation potential rests for you to uncover, and that this transformation potential is the heart of your being. So, beloveds, as this message reaches you, we ask you, in the next few days, make time, make space, make room for this grand transition of perception within your beingness. For you are ready and primed and destined to meet us on the other side of this gateway. And remember, physically speaking, initially you may feel that not much has changed when this perception switch takes place. Once again, this is not something to start chattering to each other about on your socials. I made the switch, I'm on the other side, that sort of thing. For all of these will be mental ideas. There is no true communication between the beingness that one is in the world of flow versus that, or those that one is in the world of form. There isn't. Already, the contact between the world of shape and the world of form is so brittle. What comes next has no relationship to it whatsoever. Therefore, prepare, because you are about to set foot in the unknown as we go forward like you have never before. Are you ready to go? Because we are. Several classes from now, we will return with the continuation of our contribution to this triple trilogy. Until then, we wish you bold and courageous exploration. Understand the difference between physical and metaphysical, for this will be key to your understanding your successful working with the keys. And we say this to avoid a great deal of frustration for many of you. As you step through this gateway, on the other side, you will be meted next time by Imzaia, who will guide you from this one to the next. We will speak again soon, and we wish upon you Ohami to all beings. We are your sisters. We are your siblings. And we always will be. In Sankara and in our collective love for this journey home towards the living love and the living light that is the heart of the Creator. Good evening.